Private Andrei Kushin was 19 years old and on sentry watch at a Soviet forward observation post in the Kunar province of Afghanistan on the night of November 14, 1984. The post held 4 soldiers from the 108th Motor Rifle Division at an altitude of 3,000 meters in the Hindu Kush. Their job was to watch the ridge lines and report movement. They had a thermal scope, a field radio, and a 2-week rotation schedule. In November at that altitude, the temperature at night dropped to -20. Kushin had been in the war 3 months. The duty officer had been in the Soviet Army 12 years and treated the posting as routine. That difference in experience is relevant to what happened. At 0300, the thermal scope showed something on the ridge above the post. Large, stationary. He reported it to the duty officer on the radio. The duty officer said, "Keep watching, probably an animal." Kushin kept watching for 40 minutes. The signature did not move. At 0340, he checked the scope again. It was not on the scope anymore. He swept the ridge, nothing. He swept the slope below the ridge, nothing. He swept the perimeter wire 20 meters out from his position. The scope showed something at the wire. This was the 5th night. The first night, November 10th, the duty officer had logged it as probable large predator, snow leopard possibly, or ibex on the upper ridge. The 108th Motor Rifle Division's after-action protocols included a category for large animal contact near forward posts. Kushin had been on watch that night too. He had agreed with the duty officer's assessment. It was his first posting, and the duty officer had 12 years in the Soviet Army and knew the mountains. The second night it was in the same place. Third night closer. On the 4th night, Kushin called the duty officer 0215 because the thermal signature had crossed the ridge line and was moving down the slope toward the post, and the duty officer came to the scope himself, looked for 4 minutes, and went back to his bunk without saying anything. Kushin logged his observation and spent the rest of the watch staring at the slope. The 4th night, nothing happened in the sense that nothing moved. The thermal signature held at approximately 200 meters out from 0100 to 0430, and then disappeared from the scope entirely. 4 hours stationary on a ridge at -20 in November, watching a Soviet military post. The 2 dogs the unit kept for early warning were quiet the whole night, not sleeping quiet. The quiet dogs make when they are tracking something by scent and have decided the safest thing is to stay still. Kushin noted this in his personal journal. It did not appear in the duty officer's report. On the 5th night, the signature came faster. It crossed the ridge at 0245, which was earlier than any previous night. It was at the slope by 0300. Kushin reported it immediately this time. The duty officer told him to keep watching. At 0340, it disappeared from the thermal scope and reappeared at the perimeter wire, 20 meters from Kushin's position. He heard it before he saw it. Not movement, not footsteps on rock, breathing. Very slow, the way a large thing breathes when it is not exerting itself. He had his AK-74 up, and he was scanning the dark between the scope post and his position, and he could not see anything. The night was clear. The stars were bright enough to give some light. He saw nothing where the breathing was coming from. It took him a moment to understand that. He could hear it. He could not see it. Whatever was breathing between him and the scope post was producing sound and not producing a silhouette. At 3,000 meters on a clear Hindu Kush night, a shape the size of what the thermal scope had been showing him for 5 days should have been visible against the stars. It wasn't. The breathing got closer. He could feel the temperature drop around him. Not the normal cold of the altitude, which he had been sitting in for 3 hours and had stopped noticing. Something local. Something in the air between him and the scope post. In the space where the breathing was, going cold, the way a room goes cold when a window is opened. He kept the AK-74 aimed at the breathing. He said, "Stop," in Russian. Then in Dari, the one word his unit had been given in their pre-deployment briefing. He said it twice. The breathing stopped, not because it had gone, because it was listening. It hit him from the left. Something closed around his left shoulder. Not a grip. Wider than a grip, the way a large hand is wider than a normal hand, too wide. It did not squeeze, it held. He swung the rifle barrel toward it and fired once, straight into whatever had him, and the thing let go. In the half-second of muzzle flash, he saw it. In the after-action account he gave to the GRU officer in Kabul 3 weeks later, Kashin said he would only describe 2 things about what the muzzle flash showed him. The first, it was taller than a man by at least half a meter. The second, it was looking at him the way a person looks at something they are trying to remember. Not the way a predator looks at prey, something else entirely. Then the flash was gone and the dark was back, and whatever he had seen was not there. He heard movement on the slope above the post, moving fast up toward the ridge, and then nothing. He keyed his radio. He said contact inside the wire. He gave his position. By the time the duty officer and Private Semko reached him, 2 minutes later, there was nothing to see. Kashin was standing with his rifle up, facing the slope. His left shoulder hurt. In the morning, they searched the area inside the perimeter wire where Kashin said the contact had been. The snow showed disturbance. The duty officer had expected to find animal tracks, paw prints, claw marks, the kind of evidence that would support the large predator assessment he had been filing for 4 nights. What he found was not that. The disturbance in the snow was not footprints. It was a series of heavy compressions, widely spaced, with no claw pattern and no pad pattern. They did not look like any animal track the duty officer, who had 12 years of mountain postings, had seen. Where Kashin had fired, the snow was dark. The duty officer crouched over it. The duty officer had been in the Soviet Army since 1972. He had seen blood and snow in 3 different countries. The color of this was not right. Too dark, almost black. He did not touch it. He took out his field notebook and wrote, "Black substance at contact point, origin unknown, not consistent with known fauna." He closed the notebook and said nothing more about it to the soldiers. He filed his incident report that afternoon. The GRU category for the contact was anomalous incident, further investigation recommended. The GRU did not send anyone. The post was rotated out the following week on its standard 2-week schedule. Kashin was sent back to Kabul with the rest of his unit. His left shoulder had 3 parallel marks on it, not cuts. The medical officer in Kabul described them as pressure marks, as if something had gripped him very firmly without breaking the skin. They faded within 2 weeks. Kashin said they did not hurt. He said the thing that bothered him was not the marks. The thing that bothered him was how it had looked at him. Kashin finished his tour and was discharged from the Soviet Army in 1985. He went home to Volgograd. He did not talk about Afghanistan much, which was not unusual. The Afghan veterans as a group were not a talkative generation about what they had seen. What his wife noticed within the first month was that he never sat with his back to a window at night. Restaurants, their kitchen, his mother's apartment, anywhere there was a window after dark, he sat facing it. She asked him about it once. He said, "Out there are things that watch from the dark, and the watching is not random." He said it matter-of-factly, the way a soldier states a tactical observation. She learned not to ask again. The GRU file on the Kunar province forward post anomalous incidents was declassified in 2011 and is held in the Russian State Military Archive in Moscow. It contains the duty officer's nightly reports, the formal incident report, the medical officer's examination notes on Kashin's shoulder, and the thermal scope readings from all 5 nights. The scope readings are the part of the file that the GRU analyst flagged. They show the signature on the ridge on nights 1 through 4, each night closer to the post than the night before. By night 4, it is large enough on the scope that the analyst wrote 1 word in the margin, unclear. Night 5 shows the signature crossing the ridge at 0245, moving faster than previous nights, reaching the slope at 0300, then dropping off the scope at 0340. The reading shows where it went when it left the scope. The instrument found it again briefly, at 0341, in the position Kashin described, inside the perimeter wire, 20 meters from his watch position. After Kashin fired, the scope shows nothing. The GRU analyst who reviewed the file noted this and wrote 1 sentence in the margin: contact lost. He did not specify whether this meant the thing had moved out of range or whether it meant the instrument could no longer process what it was pointing at. The file doesn't say which one applies. Where history ends and our story begins, we will let you decide where the line falls.